Shalom. This week, we conclude our Torah readings in Sefer Shemot, the book of Exodus, with a double reading of its last two portions, Vayakhel and Pekudei, which are often read together in most non-leap years. The first portion of Vayakhel, meaning "and he assembled," begins in chapter 35. On the morning after Yom Kippur, Moshe gathered together the entire nation to receive God's commands. After instructing them in the observance of the Shabbat, Moshe delivered God's instructions for every person who is motivated by the heart to take a portion, an offering for Hashem. This was a call to come forward and donate all the precious materials that were needed according to Hashem's instructions for the construction of the Tabernacle. On that first Yom Kippur, Hashem forgave the people for their mistake of the golden calf, and he decreed that the greatest proof of his eternal love was to be demonstrated and internalized by the people through the completion of the tabernacle, proving that he desired to dwell in their midst. The people responded to the call with such great enthusiasm that the gifts they brought were above and beyond what was needed. Everybody was tremendously motivated. They were possessed by a great spirit of giving. Thus we learn in chapter 36. From Moshe's presence, they took the entire gift that the children of Israel had brought for the work, for the labor of the sanctuary to do it, but they continued to bring him free-willed gifts morning after morning. So it was said to Moshe, the people are bringing more than enough for the labor of the work that Hashem has commanded to perform. Moshe commanded that they proclaim throughout the camp, saying, man and woman shall not do more work toward the gift of the sanctuary. And the people were restrained from bringing, but the work had been enough for all the work, and there was extra. So, in addition to Truma, Tetzaveh, and part of Kitisa, this week's Torah portions of Vayakhel and Pekudei now make it 5 Torah portions that are taken up with the tabernacle and its furnishings. But there really is no redundancy here. The details that were shared in the previous parshiot provided us with a glimpse of the private time that Moshe spent with Hashem on Mount Sinai, when the Almighty was teaching him the commandments of the tabernacle and its details. The portions of Vayakhel and Pekudei that we're reading this week present a real-time reporting of Moshe's giving over God's commandments to the people and the people's immediate and enthusiastic completion of the project, followed by a precise reckoning of every last detail, leaving nothing missing or unaccounted for. All those whose hearts motivated them came forth and donated all the materials that were used in the building of the tabernacle and its vessels: gold, silver, and copper, sky blue, purple, and scarlet wool, linen and goat's hair, red-dyed ram skins, tachash skins, acacia wood, oil for illumination, spices for the anointment oil and incense, shoham stones and stones for the settings, for the ephod, and for the breastplate. But here's the thing. Parshat Vayakhel is clearly parallel to the portion of Truma, where all this started, which began back in Exodus chapter 25. It takes up the thread using the very same language. Chapter 25 began with Hashem instructing Moshe, speak to the children of Israel and let them take for me a portion. From every man whose heart motivates him, you shall take my portion. And now, in our Parshat Vayakhel, Moshe said to the entire assembly of the children of Israel, this is the word that Hashem has commanded, saying, take from yourselves a portion for Hashem, everyone whose heart motivates him. So open up your heart. The keystone of this parallelism is this language of lekicha, taking. In both instances, God commands the children of Israel to take a portion from me, or to take from yourselves. The use of this expression of taking rather than nitina, giving, is ostensibly strange. An obvious and well-known question regarding both verses is, why does Torah use the language of taking as opposed to giving? A person who donates is giving, not taking, right? So let me ask you an honest question, for goodness sake. How in the world could the children of Israel, fresh out of slavery, have come up with these items, some of them, frankly, quite exotic, in the middle of the desert? Who travels through the desert with precious metals, ram skins dyed red, tachash skins, oil, precious stones? So there are a number of ideas that are discussed. Some of these things they had actually prepared in advance and they had with them, because our sages teach that the Israelites had been told what to prepare by their father, the patriarch Jacob, who knew prophetically that in the future, Hashem would be commanding his children to build the tabernacle. And thus, on his way down to Egypt, when he was reunited with his son Yosef, Yaakov also planted trees so that they would grow tall and be ready in the future to provide his descendants with the wood for the beams of the tabernacle when the time comes. There's even a midrashic opinion that some of these items were sent directly from heaven, such as the shoham stones that fell together with the manna. But in any event, regarding the majority of the materials, we learn that there were two main sources. Firstly, recall that on the night of the Exodus, the Israelites received gold, silver, and other precious items from their Egyptian neighbors, as Torah informed us back in chapter 35. And secondly, the Midrash tells us that Hashem poured down great blessing on the children of Israel at the splitting of the sea, where the treasures of Egypt were swept up in the raging waters, only to rise to the surface and wash up on the shore and into their hands. What was provided by the splitting of the sea became the source of the majority of the materials that they brought forward as their donations in answer to Moshe's call to fulfill Hashem's command of take from yourselves a portion to Hashem. Everyone whose heart motivates him shall bring it. But wait, they were giving Hashem gifts that they had themselves been gifted by Hashem, and yet they are praised for their generosity of heart. So open up your heart in the deepest way. Let me ask you another question. Couldn't the Holy One, blessed be He, have simply instructed Moshe to appoint one person with the job of simply cleaning up the beach, gathering up all the gold and silver from the seashore, and bringing the items for the building of the tabernacle? Why did God deem it necessary for all the members of the children of Israel to first pick up and take hold of these materials, making it their personal possessions, only afterwards to command that those who are motivated by the heart shall bring it forward and give it towards the tabernacle? Why this roundabout way? Why this extra step involving the people, after God himself had made plans and providentially ensured that the materials would be readily available when the time came to construct his house? But the truth is that Hashem desired that the people take the things he gave them, his gifts, for themselves, and afterwards give them back as a donation, so that giving of what had become their own possessions, it would be a contribution coming from the heart, which is the most important thing of all. So he caused them to find favor in the eyes of the Egyptians, who loaded them down with gifts. He gave them treasures at the sea, and maybe even gifts from heaven, according to one opinion, all so that it would all be theirs, from which to take a portion for Hashem. Look, a person can think, it's all me. I'm working my land, and what it produces is mine. But the truth is that everything is his, whether we receive our gifts through our own hard labor, earning it through our own toil, or whether we receive it overtly as a gift outright, or whether we could see it literally falling down from heaven. It's all the same. Everything is God's. He gives us from his extended, plentiful hand so that we can give back to him from our own. As King David expressed it so beautifully in 1 Chronicles chapter 29, "For who am I, and what is my people, that we should muster the strength to donate in this manner? For everything is from you, and from your hand have we given it to you." So open up your heart deeper still. This is the answer to our very first question. Why, regarding these contributions to the tabernacle, does Torah use a language of taking as opposed to giving? A person who donates is giving, not taking, right? Wrong. Giving is taking from Hashem. As Midrash Agadah puts it so succinctly, you are giving me what's mine. Mine is the silver and mine is the gold. The word of Hashem of hosts is what God tells us through Haggai the prophet in chapter 2. So the Midrash continues, said the Holy One, blessed be He, to Israel, donate and build the tabernacle, and do not say that you are giving me from your own possessions, for everything is mine. This is the meaning of the words, and take for me, take from what is already mine. Our sages are reminding us that since everything is Hashem's, when you give, you are actually taking. Giving to Hashem is taking from the one to whom it belongs, only to give back to him. Hashem has no need of our contributions, but he does desire our hearts. When it comes to giving, it can be hard for us to part from what we feel are our possessions. But what we're learning here is that nothing in this world is ours. The Midrash teaches when one gives tzedakah, charity, his action of giving not only benefits himself, but all of creation, literally from one end of the world to the other. This is the meaning of the words in Deuteronomy chapter 15. You shall surely open your hand. If you open your hand to a poor person, you are surely also making an opening in heaven for the rains of blessing to fall for you and for the whole world. The Holy Baal Shem Tov's teaching expounds further on this idea, that charity benefits the individual and all of creation. How does it benefit the individual? Because whatever a person does, he is really doing to himself. If he's angry with someone, his anger will come back on himself. And when he selfishly gives charity to others, he's really giving it to himself, because the kindness will come back on his head. And what does it really mean, his charity benefits all of creation? How does that work? The Holy Baal Shem Tov teaches that everything a person does, every good deed, especially acts of kindness and charity, and God forbid, conversely, every negative deed, everything a person does affects the whole world. The lone individual does not exist in a vacuum, but is intimately and intricately bound up together with every person and with every facet of the whole created world. And let not a person say, continues the Midrash, that if I give charity to the poor, my wealth will be diminished. In fact, the very opposite is true. So open up your heart deeper than ever before in your whole life. The more you give, Torah teaches, the more you will get. For although we are commanded not to test God by asking for a miracle or by demanding an immediate reward for our good deeds, as it is written in Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 16, do not test Hashem your God. The only exception to this is the commandment of charity. Hashem himself challenges us to test him through the prophet Malachi, exclaiming in chapter 3 and verse 10, bring all the tithes, and with this put me to the test, says Hashem of hosts, to see if I open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you an overflowing blessing. Thank you for watching this week's Jerusalem Lights weekly Torah portion, and thank you for being part of the Jerusalem Lights community, whose support enables the production of these videos and our continued projects of Torah education and outreach. May we truly internalize the understanding that everything Hashem gives us is a gift. Shabbat Shalom.